Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Fatmata and this is Traditionally Inspired Meaningful Art. If you are new here, I live in the Maryland area in the United States. I work in education. I'm a wife, a mom of 3, and I love to sew and make my own clothes. I like to dress modestly, so I have found that hacking patterns that I already have to make them suit me and my preferences has been a huge game changer in helping me feel confident in my clothing. So when Chris from Unsocial decided to launch the Pattern Hackathon Challenge 3 years ago, I was smitten. I was like, it's almost as if she made the challenge for me. That's what I felt like. So in its 3rd year, I am so happy to be in the vlogger tour for the Pattern Hackathon. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, I will link to Chris's introductory video down in the description box below, and I hope that you do check it out. We are really working our way through July, so hopefully you've already heard about it. Post your make on Instagram by 11:59 p.m. your time zone on July 31st. Chris is asking that everyone uses the collaboration tool just to make sure that she doesn't lose sight of your entry and just to make it easier for her to see everyone and the various categories that you're entering, because there are amazing prizes. And again, you'll find more information about that on her Instagram, but also on her introductory video, which is linked below. My friends, there are so many reasons to hack a pattern. Sometimes it's to make something easier for you, maybe omitting a zipper or a button front placket, possibly. That could be a reason. It could also be for comfort. Maybe you're going to remove some darts and add elastic to make something fit and feel a lot more comfortable on your body. It could be for modesty. I know I find myself in that boat, taking a pattern and design lines that I absolutely love, but wanting to make myself feel comfortable wearing them. You might have seen a design on a runway or a designer garment or something in a high street shop, and you want to recreate the look. And you have a base pattern that really has a great foundation, and all you need to do is add a little bit here and there to make it your own. It could also be, instead of making it easier, it could be that you want a challenge. You are craving a creative sort of boost, and being able to sort of take a base pattern and make it your own is just what you need to kickstart that joyous creative spirit. If you're not a new viewer here, I hope you can sound off in the comments down below if what I'm about to say is correct. But I think you would be more shocked to see me talk about a pattern that I have made as intended by the pattern designer than you would be to hear me say, here's how I've hacked this pattern. I think more often than not, you're in for a hack of some sort, whether I label it that or not. And I have grown to just feel so comfortable with taking a pattern and making it my own. So I hope in today's video I can share with you some of my favorite types of pattern hacks, and then I'm going to go through a lot of different examples of garments that I've made that include those hacks. From the top, I think an easy hack is to lengthen or shorten something. That could be lengthening or shortening a sleeve, a hemline. That could be raising a neckline. Lengthen or shorten. It could take a garment that was intended to be mini to midi to maxi, and that definitely changes the look of your garment. A second way that you can pattern hack is making your own view. If you're using a commercial or an indie pattern that has various views, but there's one view maybe with a certain neckline and sleeve variation that the pattern designer themselves has not put together, you have all the pattern pieces. You put it together. Make your own view from the pieces that already exist in the pattern. One of my favorite hacks is to just use the bodice, especially because I'm someone who loves a dress. And when I say just use the bodice, if you're working with a dress pattern that has a waistline seam, you are in luck, my friends, because really, that dress can have any skirt or trousers that you desire. So just use the bodice and then hack the bottom of the dress or top to include any sort of skirt or trousers to make a jumpsuit that you would like. If you're working with a design that does not have a waistline seam, Typically, designers will indicate where the waistline is on their pattern piece of a bodice. So I often will use that waistline seam, draw a line straight across, and create a waistline seam. I also love to change up a sleeve. I love this, and my favorite type of sleeve to hack on to another bodice is often one that has some gathering up at the top of the arm side. I find that the gathers make swapping out sleeves so much more forgiving. I've also found that raglan sleeves are a little bit more forgiving when you want to swap out or change up sleeves from pattern to pattern. If you're using the commercial or big four patterns, they even come out with patterns that only include sleeves. So the idea is that you would have a base bodice pattern that you could try out any of these sleeves on. So I'm not the only one who thinks swapping out a sleeve is a good idea. And I know some indie pattern designers also do that or have shared hacks of their own where they've swapped out sleeves on the patterns that they've designed. Slashing and spreading, my friends, it's such a wonderful hack. Typically, slashing and spreading, you might do that to fan out a skirt, make it a bit wider, make it a bit more voluminous. If you slash and spread, leaving the top of the pattern piece that you're working on, let's go with a skirt, for example. If you leave that waistline seam as is and just slash and spread to fan out the bottom of the skirt, then you end up with a nice wide A-line, maybe even a circle skirt by doing that. However, you could also slash and spread the whole thing out, allowing you to then have more gathers at the top or box pleats, whatever your preference there, right? So many different things that you could do. But you can also slash and spread horizontally, make horizontal lines on your pattern piece and spread it that way. That might be a really great way to ruche a garment if you want some ruching up in that bodice around your hips area. That could be really cool in a dress. I have an example to show you in a bit. Another hack is to add seam lines. Now, just be mindful that you add seam allowance when you do this, but adding a seam line might allow you to color block, mix and match different fabrics together. Now for the grand one that I have done quite often is combining patterns. If you have a pattern for a bodice maybe that you really love and another skirt or a portion of another dress that you absolutely love, I just combine those pattern pieces together. Now, this isn't always seamless. Maybe you want to shift over where darts are so that they align in the final garment that you're making. Maybe you have to really be mindful of, does everything really fit the way that it should? But by slowing down and really looking at the pattern pieces you have in front of you, you can make those determinations before you start cutting into your fabric. I have some full-length videos where I've done that, and I will definitely point you in that direction. So how about we see some garments, huh? First up, I want to talk about this top that I made a couple of years ago, and it was using the Butterick B6976 pattern. I took the top yoke section from view A, laid it over the bodice piece of view D, and traced in that crew neckline so that I had one piece for the front, smushing together views A and D to create this. And I had an overlay that I wanted to use. So I also went ahead and instead of using a facing, I lined the entire bodice because I had enough fabric to do so since I was using this really gorgeous overlay mesh fabric and this gorgeous red silk. So right there, you have all of the pattern pieces that you need, just a little bit of tracing necessary, and you could make your own view. Next up, I want to share with you this gorgeous dress that I made years ago, and this is out of a velvet stretch burnout fabric that I had picked up at Joann. I use Simplicity 8982. This is a very simple dress pattern, and simple patterns are often the best to use when hacking. So I put some slashes horizontally in the bodice pattern, beginning a little bit below the bust line throughout the waist and near the hips in this section, and extended that front section so that I could then add some elastic to ruche the center front and the side seams here. It's hard to see in this fabric, but there is ruching right down the center front, and I'll turn it inside out so you can see that. I also added that elastic to the side seams, so I had some beautiful ruching there. At the bottom, I did go ahead and cut a length of the fabric to add a ruffle, again to give me a length that I felt comfortable with to make it maxi. I did not elasticate the back so that it created a bit of a high-low effect. So here's how slashing and spreading could really change up and switch up the look of a garment. Here is a new look N6676. I went ahead and added about 6 inches to the bottom of the hem there to make this a maxi length dress on me, and that worked out really well. I kept the neckline. I fully lined the dress. However, that doesn't change what the dress looks like aesthetically, so I don't really know if that's a hack as much. But what is quite different is the sleeve on this dress. I wanted to try this very nice balloon type sleeve so badly with a sleeve stay on the inside. I have a video where I go into all the details of how I created this sleeve on the dress, and I'll try and link that in the description box below. So by elongating the original sleeve that came in this pattern, I knew that it would fit beautifully into the arm side. I didn't have to worry about that. That allowed it to go to about my elbow right before I added this gorgeous gathered piece here at the ends. Here is a look at the inside of the sleeve just so you can kind of see what that looks like. I created what I believe is called a sleeve stay, if I'm not mistaken, to hold onto that voluminous gather so that I didn't need to use elastic at the bottom there. Let's talk about this gorgeous skirt that I made years ago. I have a full video of the making of this up on my channel. This is Simplicity 8746. I hacked view C of this pattern. This involved creating my own seam lines within the pattern. So as you can see, hopefully based on the different fabrics here, there is a beautiful curve that I added to the front panels, and there is a similar curve on the other side as well that enabled me to insert these flounces that I created out of circles that I joined together using French seams, and it was just absolutely a delight to work with. I think that the resulting skirt that I got out of it is amazing. It just makes me want to dance the night away and twirl in the skirt. And here's how you can add a seam line and a flounce to really change up a garment. Let's talk about what I'm wearing. So I fell in love with Simplicity S8834 some time ago. Back in 2020 is the first version that I made of this, out of a black and white sort of crepe rayon fabric, and I loved it. I've since given it away, but this pattern lives on. Something that you need to know about me is I love a collar and I love a button front placket. I don't know what it is, but the look, I just love it. I was able to sort of bring two patterns together in a way to make this dress. So majority of this dress is the S8834, but I really wanted to include the button front placket and the one-piece collar of Simplicity S9114, the Mimi G pattern, which I had also previously made and knew that I loved. And the result is this dress. So you have the bell sleeve, which I did not put the slit in, so it just continues down. That quintessential sort of tie feature, which I extended my ties so that I could tie it all the way in the back. I lengthened the skirt as well. I was able to lay those pieces on top of each other, find out from the center front how much I needed to extend the bodice front here so that I could create the button front placket, and then I added the collar. These two necklines are not the same width. The Mimi G pattern, it has a much narrower neckline, and this is a bit wider. So when I was going to actually attach the collar, they didn't necessarily fit. But what I did was I attached it from the center front and the center back and saw where I had excess at the sides. And I found that if I just included a little pleat here at the center of the sleeve, of this raglan sleeve, that it could look more like a design feature. And that was how I sort of worked my way around that detail. So I have another garment where I smushed together S8834 with McCall's 7472. I used the McCall's pattern primarily for the collar, the two-piece collar, for the button front placket, and also the shape of the raglan sleeve and the sleeves themselves. And what I pulled from the Simplicity pattern was the tie front feature, because I wanted to figure out how to make that work. The result was this white top here, which I made out of a stretch cotton sateen, is what I think I would call this. I picked it up in the denim section of Joann's, back when Joann was around, and it is quite hefty. That's my only issue with this top, is how thick the fabric is. I wish I would have used a lighter fabric. However, the actual resulting garment is a winner, because I was using the S8834, which has a waistline seam to enable you to create this tie feature. That did mean that the front of my shirt piece is cut out in two parts. So there is a small seam here that lives right under the tie front. Here's how I combine these two patterns to make a really beautiful top. And I think I would revisit this hack again for sure. I'm back after a little bit of an intermission. Today is Friday as I'm recording this, so I ran to go for the Friday prayer, and now I'm back. But in doing so, I went ahead and layered this dress with some black wide leg slacks, and I have never actually worn it as sort of a long line top, and I'm enjoying this. So this is another way that I might wear this dress. Because I had already begun talking about my love affair with Simplicity 9114 by Mimi G herself, I want to show you some hacks that I've done with this pattern as well, and they fall under the category just use the bodice. I just love how simple it is to cut out and also to construct. When I've had limited fabric and I want to get the most with the boxy nature of that bodice, I've just used the bodice and hacked on my own skirt. I was able to use the width of my fabric to go ahead and add a first tier, and then I used the remainder of my fabric to add a second tier at the bottom there. In order to save as much fabric as possible, I did not continue the button front placket beyond the bodice section, so I did go ahead and tack that together at the bottom of the bodice and just added the gathered panel. Now, after making this, I regretted that I did not include side seam pockets or ties at the waist so that I could cinch it in if I wanted to. Since then, I've gone on to use it again with this gorgeous buffalo check fabric in the most darling fabric. It has this crinkle texture in some of the squares, which I absolutely adore in this pattern. Similar hack here. I went ahead and used the bodice, but this time around, I did have enough to continue that button front placket all the way throughout the skirt. I only did a single gathered tier in this, so there is no additional tier, just this gathered panel here. This time I did remember to add pockets into the side seams and ties so that I could cinch it in. I also put a slit down here at the bottom just so it would allow my legs to move a bit more freely in this. The length of it was really determined by the amount of fabric that I had left. Here is another way that you can just use the bodice and tack on any type of skirt that you have, allowing you to make the most of whatever fabric you have left to work with. So what is this S8875 that I keep talking about? My friends, it is possibly one of my favorite patterns to date, and that is this lovely dress right here. It just makes me feel so feminine, so flirty. It's beautiful. But as you can see, there is a V neckline, which is not a design feature that I feel particularly comfortable in, wanting to dress more modestly, but I have made it. And I do think for busy fabrics, it is nice to have some breathing room up at the top. Typically for me, that means that I would be wearing a crew neck sort of top layered under this for that modesty, but I do like that it gives that bit of separation because I've often made this in a printed fabric, a very busy print. This is the first iteration that I made, and I think the only hack that I did here was that I lengthened the bottom ruffle and tier so that it was a bit more maxi length. As you can see here, it is more midi length on the model, and I wanted mine longer. In another iteration of the S8875, I went ahead and just used the bodice. So this is where I actually went in, because there is not a waistline seam here, I created one. I used these skirt pieces and found where they marked the waistline on the skirt piece, pattern piece, and drew a line straight across so that I could cut that off to create a midriff section. Creating that midriff section meant that I could add any sort of skirt to the bottom of it that I wanted. And for this version, I decided to add a double circle skirt because I was using this thrifted king size duvet cover that I found, which meant that I had a ton of fabric to play with, and I just wanted to be a ray of sunshine everywhere I went. And in my subsequent makes, I decided that actually lining the bodice was a great idea so that I wouldn't need to do the facings. So that's what I did here. I wouldn't call that a hack necessarily, again, because it didn't necessarily change what the outside of the garment looked like, but it was a feature that I personally loved. And that's why I love revisiting a pattern you've made before. You get to put some touches on it or make some finishes that you love. Because I had already created that midriff panel here, I went ahead and used the same pattern piece I had created, and I just added a simple single tiered gathered skirt, mainly because that was all of the fabric that I had left after cutting out the bodice and these gorgeous voluminous sleeves. Another hack that I made here was that I wanted to add cuffs to the bottom of the sleeve, and that is my fabulous dress out of this amazing viscose fabric. Then last year, when I was tasked with making my bridesmaid's dress for my best friend's wedding, after trying out a different pattern, I came back to Old Faithful. Another hack that I did was that I added a modesty panel, which was just built into the dress so that I wouldn't have to always think about layering this when I wore it, and that was really fun to kind of construct. There is a standalone video for the making of this dress as well that I will link down for you below so that you can see how I did that. I was oh so glad that I had that midriff seam as well, because this time around I added a full circle skirt with pockets, might I add. This dress is fully lined as well. This is a gorgeous orange poly satin fabric that I picked up in Paris, and I had some of this orange viscose that was perfect for the lining. You can see that modesty panel beautifully tucked in to those seams here, and it's fully lined. I am so proud of this. I hacked the sleeves, so it's the same beautiful gathering at the sleeve cap. I just extended the sleeve and added shirring to the edge there to bring it back in at my wrist. When I ordered these two fabrics from Mood Fabrics, it's the same exact print but in two different colorways, navy and ivory. I knew that I wanted to mash them together to do like a Farm Rio inspired mixed print dress, and that's what you have here. I used primarily the B3908 However, I added a design line by going ahead to split the skirt into two halves so that I could use one fabric for each side. And then you have that beautiful gathered section at the bottom, again lengthening it so that this was a maxi length dress. For the sleeves, this is a two-part sleeve. The Butterick pattern is a two-part sleeve. So I went ahead and used that, and at the ends, I shirred it at the bottom, add a shirred panel to the bottom so that it would have that beautiful feminine nipped-in touch that I liked here at the wrist. And that is how you can mash two patterns together, change up a sleeve a little bit, lengthen, add a seam line to go ahead and make patterns your very own. In a collaboration with Sarah from Naughty Gnome Crafts, I was able to also make this dress using B6905 again, and this time I did one of my favorite hacks, adding a waistline seam so that I could add a two-tiered gathered skirt to this lovely bodice. And because I did not want to use a two-piece raglan sleeve I ended up swapping the sleeve of the B6705 for my Simplicity 8834 sleeve pattern, which only has a single piece and a dart at the shoulder seam. So that's what I did here. It allowed me to incorporate some gorgeous trim, and I did a little pin tuck detail in the midriff section that was created by adding that waistline. And I did a 2-tiered gathered skirt, of course with that added razzle and dazzle at the bottom. And I also chose to fully line this, given that the outer fabric is this beautiful lightweight poly fabric, but it is semi-sheer. Go ahead, don't be afraid, add a waistline so you can put on whatever kind of skirt you want. Change up the sleeve to make it maybe easier, in my case here, to work with the amount of fabric that you have left, and you won't be disappointed. Here was my hack using B6705. I'm always on the quest for like my favorite button-up shirt dress pattern, and I was eager to try B6702, and I have used the bodice of it about 3 times. I have yet to make it with the skirt that comes in this pattern. I never seem to have enough fabric. So the first time I utilized the bodice of B6702, I had this beautiful cotton fabric that I picked up at the dead stock section at G Street Fabrics, and I wanted to use all of the rickrack trim to highlight these beautiful details. While I did create a button front placket down in this first tier of the gathers in the skirt that I put on, I actually closed off the button front placket, just sewed it shut, and added about 3 snaps to the bottom. Because it's fitted, it would not just slip on over my head if I didn't have space below the waistline. So I did need to have some sort of closure system down here. So I just added these 3 snaps and then sewed up the rest of it. Because I just used the bodice and put on the type of skirt that I wanted, I went ahead and played with the direction of this print so that I would have the little tick marks going horizontally in the first tier and then back to vertical in the bottom tier, just to highlight this print a bit more. I made sure to add pockets because I was making my own skirt. Why not add some side seam pockets that are anchored into this waistline so they're extra secure and not floppy. And I added embellishments everywhere I could with this gorgeous rickrack trim that I had in my stash, even down at the bottom. This is also the bodice of the B6702, however, looking completely different. I did not add the collar this time. I went for a little bit of a pie crust moment here, just added a little gathered strip along the neckline to create this really cute little gathered section. I did not have enough fabric to add a separate button front placket, which this pattern calls for. So instead, I just extended the bodice front piece so that I could turn it under twice to create a button front placket. Also meant that I didn't have to interrupt this gorgeous motif that I wanted to highlight. I just used the bodice and added the skirt of Simplicity 8834 to this. Of course, then instead of cutting the skirt on the fold, I went ahead and cut the front of the skirt in 2 pieces and extended it to include the button front placket down the skirt as well. You can see that the sleeves are also different. They are 3/4 lengths, again, just using the remaining fabric that I had at that point. So no cuffs added to this. I revisited this bodice yet again in an attempt to really work out the fit here. However, I did not remember to shorten the bodice like I've been telling myself to do. So I have to write that down somewhere. But here is an Atelier Brunette fabric that I picked up at You Fine Fibers, and I used the bodice of the B6702. Again, didn't have enough fabric to do the separate button front placket, so I did my same hack where I just extend the front, fold it under to create the button front placket. I just used the collar stand that comes with this pattern, And for the sleeve, I had the sleeve, but instead of adding the cuff, I added a shirred panel to the bottom. Under the bodice, I went ahead and added a 2-tiered gathered skirt, my usual go-to, it seems, when I'm short on fabric. And I remembered to add some pockets and waist ties to this so that I could cinch it in for some added shaping. Here is an example of adding seam lines. With Simplicity 8742, it's this really wonderful cardigan, and I made sort of like a coatigan out of this fluffy faux Sherpa fabric that I picked up from Joann. There were a bunch of remnant pieces that I kept picking up, and I wanted to find a way to color block them and put them together. So I used this pattern and created my own seam lines, adding these color blocked panels and even color blocking the sleeve for the cuff section to make this wonderful outerwear piece. You have that bit of color blocking extending to the back as well. If you've stuck with me so far, thank you so much. I know I'm sharing a lot with you, but I hope that it's inspiring and also motivating so that you can get out there and hack a pattern of your own. And I hope that the variety of things that I'm showing you, some hopefully are easier, maybe more approachable, and others might be for those of you who are a bit more daring or had never considered ways of mashing things together. Now, the final piece that I want to show you is a more recent make from my spring wardrobe makes, and I'm so proud of this dress right here. It is one where I mushed 2 patterns together. So 2 patterns can sometimes be greater than one. I had this lovely vintage Butterick 3908 pattern. I knew I loved this bodice so much. I really would have loved to have made the dress as is with the skirt just lengthened to maxi. However, I didn't have enough of this beautiful fabric. It's a cotton sateen that I had picked up in Paris, and I wish I had bought 1 more meter of it. I really do. However, I didn't have enough. So I went to New Look 6676. It's a skirt pattern that I had hacked previously, but I went ahead and utilized it because I love that yoke feature. I did a couple of things to this, and watching the video where I share about this might be the best way to really learn about how I hacked this. However, I elongated this initial yoke section by about 4 inches, 3 inches at the bottom, 1 inch at the top, just to get the proportions right for me. And then I lengthened that tier that's added to it. This pattern has a side seam zipper. So instead of cutting the skirt front on the fold, I actually cut it in 2 pieces so that I could continue that button front placket into the skirt section here. Went ahead and added piping details to every seam where I could get it into. I only had 1 packet of this piping, and it made its way all throughout the bodice, which I'm really proud of. So there you have it. Tons of makes, tons of inspiration, I hope. Please let me know in the comments down below your favorite hack from this video and what you are inspired to hack next. I hope that you participate in the hackathon. Make sure and tag and share your posts by July 31st. I hope to be sharing mine as well. Thank you so much for watching. Can't wait to hear from you. Bye.